Hey everyone, it's Blake. Welcome in to episode number 28 of our Exploring the CVerse series in TEW 2020. This is IPW, Invincible Pro Wrestling, and this was the obvious sort of next one to do in the series after we did GSW previously, because the two kind of tie together in terms of their history, and we'll get into that here in just a second. But we are 28 episodes now into this Exploring the CVerse series, and I think by my count we only got 7 or maybe 8 to go, so almost finished with the Exploring the CVerse. And so if you want to go back, check out all the ones we've done thus far in the series. A great sort of stroll through the CornellVerse to start TEW 2020, and as always say, great comments in all these videos with people giving kind of their own insight into playing as some of these promotions. So really great, valuable resource, I think, for those of you trying to get into playing the CVerse, especially, like I said, in the comments, because I think everyone else just has a lot of great insight into what you can expect. So let's talk about IPW here on this one, a promotion that is tiny to start things off, ranked 23rd in the world. What do you know? GSW is 22nd, which we did on the previous episode. So right there together, it's the way it's supposed to be with these two promotions. But one of the differences is the money, because IPW has $400,000 to work with. That's significantly more than GSW has to work with. 42% momentum, 28% prestige. We'll talk about kind of maybe some of the impact on that, because this is a company regrouping from a pretty chaotic stretch, and we'll get to that here in just a second. But size always important here in terms of looking at where the company is at. 25 in the Southwest, that's kind of where you're based at. To get to the small range, you got to get to 35 popularity, so a manageable path, as we usually see with some of these kind of smaller independent promotions. But not really branched out beyond that, but got a little bit of exposure in the Mid-South and Northwest. But nonetheless, this is where everything is at, and so to get to there, run some good shows, and you can get to that 35, I think. I won't say easily, but you can make it work for sure. So, all right, let's look at the background for IPW. And as I said, this is one of those things where these two just sort of seem to tie together with IPW and GSW. Set up in Los Angeles, 2011. You had 3 people kind of as the starting point here. Gil Thomas, financial part of it, Nemesis, and Brother Grimm, who we talked about in the GSW episode. But what happened was Brother Grimm was not happy with his partners because his ideas were not being used. So that's why he started GSW. But he also took some of the members of the roster, which we also discussed in that previous episode. So kind of starting the war between the two promotions. But then, IPW going right along. Nemesis passes away in 2017. So now Vin Tanner kind of taking over as a leadership role, and again, trying to regroup after a pretty wild stretch there for any promotion. But that's kind of where things are at with IPW. So it's, can you sort of continue that, continue to get things back on track after, again, what was a pretty crazy situation there with everything involved, whether it was the Nemesis situation or just everything that happened with Brother Grimm. So a lot to kind of push, I think, if you want to kind of play up a different story and kind of narrative with this, playing with this promotion. There's a lot you can work with there as a starting point. All right, let's talk about the product. And Urban Alternative, the name of the style here, anti-establishment hardcore. So really, as you see, it's just kind of toning down the extreme part of the hardcore equation. You're just toning it down a little bit, because you don't have every match just kind of resulting in a blood brawl and all this. Like, it's just, you don't get that with every match. So toned down, but still very hardcore. I think that's certainly worth noting. You don't have the face heel divide. That is something, again, that always can kind of play into things. Injuries, you're going to get those. You kind of look at the breakdown here, pretty typical in terms of what you can expect matches and angles wise. Again, like I said, it's, you're going to have the different match aims too, but the injuries are going to be something that you just kind of expect with this. But you do have to have the 3 match aims, either hardcore, wild brawl, car crash, or mayhem, and then steal the show. So all 3 of those have to be involved, which makes sense for a promotion with the core product of anti-establishment hardcore. So this is, you know what to expect from a promotion like this, hardcore style, and they really play into that, even if it's not as, not as bloody as perhaps some of the others when it comes to those kind of matches. So, all right, the event schedule, pretty typical, again, when it comes to your event schedule. It is worth noting, in August, week 3, you've got the Nemesis Tribute Show meant to take place in your home region in the Southwest. So you don't have any, event graphics or anything like that. So you can find those elsewhere and make them yourself, however you want to do it. If you want those, I always enjoy them, but for a promotion like this, you're not always going to have those. So you do have kind of themes, though, to the events. I think that's something that you can play into, like, for example, the Triple Mania one here, not to be confused with the Triple Mania in reality, but, your main event is a three-way singles. So can you build that into your stories, that you push and matches that you book and all that? That's something you can go with. Obviously, again, you've got kind of those, it almost was like WWE-esque themes, like Last Man Standing. So it's your main event, a Last Man Standing match. I don't know. Falls Count Anywhere. Like, you can play into these kind of themes, but you also have the Carnage in the cage. So certainly you could have a cage theme show or a main event just with a cage. So yeah, I like kind of playing into some of those, as you guys know. I like just using the starting themes, but sometimes you can make it your own, and that's also the beautiful part of, I think, playing a game like this. So there's your event schedule. Titles also pretty normal from that regard. You got the Californian Championship here. You can kind of view that as your mid card, lower card type belts. Not really in and out of fashion as it's easier depending on how it's booked. Tag team titles, not really that much higher than the Californian. And then you've got your IPW Championship, which it is worth noting, and you can use this, I think, as part of, how you run this promotion, but one of the more prestigious independent titles. So I'm continuing maybe to push it that way and having some lengthy runs with some top stars. That is something, too, that you can play into, just kind of the legacy, perhaps, of the IPW Championship. So that is something there to note. All right, before we kind of get into the roster, there's not a lot elsewhere, with a company like this, because it is smaller and, you don't have the usual child company, developmental training, all that kind of stuff. But what you do have is the Confederation of the Territories. Yes, because IPW is one of those members, the five that we see now in this alliance here, and with CZCW, MAW, NYCW, and Ollie. So look, it's a luxury to have. I think if you've played any of these promotions, that are involved in Confederation of the Territories, it's just nice to have, because you can propose talent trades, you can bring in other workers to use for different shows, and it's a good way to, I think, kind of help boost your popularity, run some better shows, keep things fresh. And so yeah, there's always a lot, I think, to like about just being one of these promotions, because you have that to turn to if you need it. Not that you have to, because I'll show you in a minute. Like, I actually think it's a pretty fun and entertaining roster, but there are also workers you can bring in to really, push some other fun stuff and book some matches that, you don't get the chance to book otherwise. And so that's always something I think that's kind of fun to look at. So you have that in your back pocket if you need it. You have 29 wrestlers to start off with, so again, not a big roster. I forgot to mention earlier, the Invincibility show, that's your season finale. That's going to be in June, so midway through the year. So you've got a little time to build to that in your starting save if you start, early on in 2020. So that is their stables. You've got one stable, and as I put in my notes here, just a unique stable here, because you've got the Dark Watch, and there's a lot you could do with this, right? You kind of have a stable that was under someone else's leadership at one point, but kind of a takeover from Deacon Darkhold here, who takes over, Algis Blackfriar's cult. So, now you've kind of got that story you can build in. And as we'll see, Blackfriar is pretty much your top star. So you've got a faction that is, sort of taken over here and going after the top star essentially in the promotion. So that's, something you can play up if you want to use that from booking matches and stories and those kind of things. But it is just kind of a unique thing. I love this logo. Like, this is just tremendous. So yeah, I would definitely be using the Dark Watch in a very significant way, even though it says not a major player, but definitely be using it significantly in a promotion like this. So yeah, it would be, I think, a lot of fun to book that idea there. All right. I'm trying to look. I'm like, well, obviously you've got some storylines to start off with here. Again, you kind of see, Blackfriar's challenge. That's kind of everything involved with the Dark Watch, and all of that. So you can use the starting storylines if you want. The Minnesota Miracle, that's an interesting one. As we'll look at, the IPW championships tag-wise are very interesting, because you've got two challengers to Smallbone and Longstaff here, as we're going to look at Otis and Sasquatch. Oh my, what an interesting duo that is, but we'll get to them in just a second. So yeah, you've got three starting storylines here, so you can play around with that and use them. I always say, I think it's fun to use the starting storylines, because it helps you just jump right into the game world. You don't have to think too much about it and just go right with the starting story. So it can be kind of easier to do when you have that possibility. So, all right, let's look at, we'll start with the creative section of YouTube. Like I said, Blackfire's the top star, good star presence, good charisma. Can definitely use him angle-wise because he's easily, I would think, I mean, I haven't filtered it to look at it, but when you've got a guy that's got this range on the microphone, you can definitely use a lot here, I think, to get, more out of ratings and that kind of stuff. So popularity is 37 in the Southwest too, but a lot of good skills here. Like I said, it's pretty clear that the best on the roster for sure. So next big things, you've got Sasquatch. And I mean, there's no next to Sasquatch being the next big thing because this guy is 6'11", as it says, monster of a man. So, you can definitely use this to your advantage. But like I said, there's also Otis, who we're going to get to in a second. Otis is, I think, 6'10", and they're a tag team. So you got a 6'11", 6'10" tag team, guys. You will take that. Skill-wise, though, he's got some menace. That's about it, though. So you can definitely try to develop Sasquatch into something better. I don't want to say bigger because I don't know if he can get that much bigger. But again, hot prospects. You can look at the group here. I think what I like too, like they've got some pretty defining like images for this promotion. Like these are pretty standout images for different people, and so it helps you kind of immerse yourself a little bit more in the characters. Like Zombie Boy here, like that's just it's a clean looking image. Talked about Sasquatch. It's just he looks like a Sasquatch. Like that's great. So Alvarez here, like you've just got a lot of fun stuff you can work with there. Got some good mic skills, as we said. Blackfire at the top in that regard. So, the usual stuff you can filter out through here, see who your best in-ring workers are. Some of these names, too, I think are just fantastic. Let me go back to Fiasco Fierce. Just a tremendous name. Hustle Mova, like that's tremendous. Like these are great names, so you can have a lot of fun with that. And yeah, I think that, again, there's I think it's just a great mix of characters. We talked about Otis here. Otis Von Battenberg, 6'10", 380. And again, you've got them as a tag team. So you're looking at your teams here. Canadian Hardcore, Otis and Sasquatch, 6'10", 6'11". So that could be a fun thing to book. Just perhaps the most dominant tag team run in the history of civilization. That could be something you have there. But when you look down the tag team lineup here, like you've got some like experienced tag teams in this group. And so I think that's kind of fun to think about. The Night Terrors, you've got the Mexican Hardcore Killers. Again, as you'll see, like if you watch the GSW episode, like there's certainly some common themes between those two. So in terms of just kind of, the way the promotions are kind of built from a roster standpoint. And so, yeah, like I think there's a lot of similarities for sure. So, again, not a big roster here. So you just kind of scroll through as usual, figure out, what you have to work with. I think definitely leaning into some of these guys that have great, microphone skills, just charisma skills. That's important because, that'll help you certainly with some of your angles and everything. But there seems to be a good mix of talent for sure. And you've got some young talent on the roster. Like we said, someone like a Deacon Darkhold, who's also, again, he's the leader of this Dark Watch. But, boy, his stats are not great. And so, yeah, like you can find a lot of different ideas to work with, I think, and really just come up with some fun stuff. Like if we filter it, you guys know, as I always do, I like to just kind of see, all right, what do you have like from a star quality standpoint? Like any just huge superstars. Fortunately, Jack's the only one that's at like a 70 or an 80 or higher. So you don't have a lot of, that from that standpoint. I guess we could just go to like 65. So yeah, like 65 or higher. You've got some star quality there with some of these workers. And again, I think you don't have a lot of older workers because it's independent promotion. You can kind of, again, bring in some guys in and out. But, yeah, it's a fun-looking roster to me, and I think just the best thing I think that you have to work with is just the overall narrative for the company and being able to kind of see what, you can use with that. It's full-on war, right? Like you have a positive relationship with these others, but it is hostile attitude towards GSW, and, again, that can turn into a full-blown war and all those kind of things. PSW also, we talked about it. Like that's a talent trading agreement there. So that was someone else, even though they're not in, the Confederation of Territories, you can get talent from there. So a lot of options for talent. If you like the hardcore type style, I don't know, maybe it's trying to figure out if you think GSW or IPW is the better option. I think IPW from a financial standpoint is definitely the better option because they have at least double the money to start with. So that helps. And I think, again, the roster there's some fun elements of the roster that you can lean into, especially to start things off here with this promotion. So there you go, another hardcore promotion here in the starting world in the CVerse and IPW. Let me know what you think. If you've played with IPW before, any insight, any tips and tricks, that always helps. Again, we look at this stuff, but until you actually play through it, you have to be able to kind of get that feedback just by playing this promotion for a couple months, seeing what happens, with workers, finances, that kind of stuff. So yeah, always valuable to get your insight on that. So let me know in the comments what you think, and that will help other players as well. As always, be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and check out everything else we've got on the channel. The WWE AEW series, if you're into the real world scenarios. If not, we have the TCW series in the CVerse, which we're just getting a lot of great feedback on that. So I really appreciate you guys keeping the momentum going there, because we were having a lot of fun with that. About 10 episodes in now, I think. So yeah, a lot of fun with TCW, and we will have some more CVerse saves on the way in the future. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. And again, always appreciate you guys watching. But on the next episode of our Exploring the CVerse series, we head to England as we take a look at CWW.